In January 1991, a 25-year-old sheet metalwork student stands before a judge in Brisbane, Australia. Tracy Averill Wigington is accused of the murder of a middle-aged man, Edward Baldock. She pleads guilty. It looks like an open and shut case, and the event almost passes under the media radar. That is until the trial of Wigington's alleged 3 accomplices in the murder, which takes place amidst sensational allegations.
She said, "This is the night. This is what we're going to do. I need the blood. I need it. I'm a vampire."
The women claim that they are not responsible for their part in Edward Baldock's death. They have fallen under the spell of a lesbian vampire. Could they possibly be telling the truth? Or are they all equally guilty? It would be for an Australian court to decipher the truth behind the extraordinary case of the lesbian vampire killers. Brisbane, in Queensland, on the east coast of Australia, is a thriving city and fashionable tourist destination. Home to a population of 2 million, the city, with its warm sunshine and picturesque parks and gardens, is an unlikely backdrop for the dark, grisly world of cold-blooded murder. But in 1989, Brisbane's affluent West End becomes the scene of one of the most chilling and unusual crimes ever committed. In the early hours of the 21st of October, Brisbane housewife Elaine Baldock wakes up in bed. She reaches out for her husband, but there is no sign of him. 47-year-old Edward Baldock works as a road paver for the local authority. The couple have recently celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. Edward, a father of 5, frequently goes drinking with friends on his day off. But he never stays out late. So at 5 a.m., Elaine Baldock calls the Brisbane police to report him missing. At dawn that morning, rower Stephen Kerrin is out on the Brisbane River.
I was first boat out that morning, which was unusual for me. I was looking around and then out of my peripheral vision I saw Mr. Baldock on the bank.
In front of the boathouse, Kerrin spots what looks like a body. After directing some early morning joggers away, Stephen stops and pulls his boat into the bank to take a closer look.
He was in a fetal position, he was naked, he defecated, there was blood all up the wall of the boat shed, his head was back and he was basically cut from ear to ear through his throat. And it was a very messy, horrible scene.
Police Chief Patrick Glancy is the lead investigator assigned to the case and is one of the first on the scene.
A very decent family at West End, and we feel very sad for them. He's a father of 5, and a dreadful thing to be taken from them at 47 years of age.
Now retired, but with a career spanning nearly 30 years, Clancy is familiar with the gruesome nature of murder. But what he sees on the morning of the 21st of October still remains vivid in his memory.
The body was naked. He was covered in blood, congealed blood mainly. He had a pair of socks on his feet, but nothing else. The body had in excess of 12 good puncture wounds to the chest and back. The only thing holding the head to the body, I think myself, was just the spine.
On closer inspection of the scene, Clancy finds two significant clues. One is a wallet, which reveals the identity of his victim.
I opened it and found that it had $35, a bank card in the name of E.C. Baldock.
The other clue will reveal his killer.
Nearby was a set of tan shoes, and in one of those shoes was found a Commonwealth bank card in a yellow folder, covering folder, identical to the card belonging to the man Baldock. The only difference being that this one had the name T.A. Wigington on it.
Within hours, the police arrest 24-year-old Tracy Wigington and bring her in for questioning. In Tracy's interview with police, 3 accomplices are implicated. And within 24 hours of the murder, all 4 women are charged with the crime. "15 months later, the media hardly notices when Tracy Wigington attends committal proceedings to determine if there is a sufficient case for trial.
I gave evidence in the committal. All the evidence came out against her that we had, and she eventually pleaded guilty to that, and there was no trial in relation to Wigington.
Confronted by the evidence of her bank card found in Baldock's shoe, Wigington accepts responsibility and is immediately sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Edward Baldock. In the meantime, though, only one of her co-defendants has been allowed bail, and all 3 insist they are innocent. On the 31st of January 1991, the trial of the other 3 women begins, and the story takes a sensational twist. The tale of the lesbian vampire killers now captivates Australia. Like Tracy Wigington, Lisa Ptaschinski, Kim Jarvis, and Tracy Waugh all stand accused of the murder of Edward Baldock. Their defense? At the time of the slaying, they were under the evil spell of Tracy the Vampire.
The court has been told that Tracy Wigington believed she was a vampire. She was involved in satanic worship, witchcraft and blood drinking. Her co-accused, Lisa Ptaschinski, said she could not eat solid food. She had to feed on blood.
The trial's outcome hangs on whether they were bewitched by a lesbian vampire killer or just cold-blooded murderers like Wigington. To prove the women's guilt, prosecutor Adrian Gunderlag must show that the decision to kill Edward Baldock was a calculated and collaborative one. At the trial, it emerges that Wigington, her lover Ptaschinski, Jarvis and her partner Waugh had met at a gay night spot only a few weeks before the murder. The women share a morbid interest in the occult.
At Jarvis's house, we found a montage of photos, all taken of various cemeteries around Brisbane. The group appeared preoccupied with death.
Soon Wigington reveals her strange obsession to her new friends.
Wigington was in the habit of buying blood from the butcher shop and drinking that blood. Ptaschinski offered to supply her with her blood from her body. She would get the Stanley knife and cut a vein, and Wigington would feed on the blood from that vein.
It was at Kim Jarvis's house that the group now hatched a grisly scheme to satisfy Tracy's gruesome habit.
Oh, it was obviously premeditated. They used to talk about it a lot before it happened. She said, I need the blood. I need it. I'm a vampire. And they were prepared to go along with her and help her.
Chief Investigator Pat Glancy, whose team had interviewed all the defendants, is the star witness for the prosecution. He reveals what the women told him happened on the evening of October the 20th, 1989.
They all met at the L'Amour's, which was a gay nightclub in Ann Street, Fortitude Valley. That's where they all got together.
In what the prosecution claims is a clear sign of premeditation, the group go to the nightclub armed with knives. A witness claims they were in celebratory mood, drinking champagne, a change from their normal beverage of choice. At 11:30 p.m, the women leave the club together. The four girls climb into Tracy's car and begin cruising the city. They take the Story Bridge over the Brisbane River and follow River Terrace towards the suburb Kangaroo Point. Less than a mile away, Edward Baldock has been enjoying his day off, drinking beer and playing darts at his regular bar, the Caledonian Club. Just after midnight, a drunken bulldog staggers onto the street. At the same time, Wigington's car, driven by Paczynski, cruises by.
The girls had planned, that one of them would act as a prostitute to entice him into the vehicle.
They found him and offered him a lift, with the promise of something more to come if he was prepared to get in the car.
Kim Jarvis plays a key role in trapping him.
Jarvis, who was more attractive of the four of them, she enticed Mr. Baldock into the car. Paczynski said he was as drunk as a skunk when they picked him up swinging around a signpost.
Fatefully, Baldock climbs into the back of the vehicle with Wigington.
You do strange things when you're drunk, and he obviously was very drunk.
Glancy tells the court that Edward Baldock is now driven the short distance to the banks of the Brisbane River in the fashionable Orley Park area of Brisbane's West End.
They parked the vehicle in front of the sailing club. Three females waited there while Wigington took the victim round to the rear of the boat shed. He stripped his clothes off and sat down. She said she sat down and held his hand for a while.
Fearing that even a drunk bulldog will be too difficult to overpower by herself, Wigington returns to the car, calling on her lover, Lisa Paczynski, to help her.
Paczynski also had a knife that was given her by Jarvis. The idea was Paczynski was to stick the knife in him, but on arrival there she found she couldn't do it. She handed the knife to Wigington. Wigington stuck it in his back right to the hilt. Then she used her own knife and stabbed him in the back numerous times. She stabbed him in the front of the neck. She stabbed him in his side of the neck. And she rolled him over, stabbed him in one side, and then stabbed him in the other side.
Wigington leans up against the sailing club entrance and watches Baldock draw his last breath. Then, in shocking testimony from the girls, they allege that Wigington does something extraordinary.
She stabbed him so many times she'd created a cavity, a hole in his back, about the size of a bread and butter plate. And she told the girl she was going to drink blood, and she actually was seen to put a face into the aperture she'd created in his back.
She washed her arms and hair at the riverside and walked back up to the car, and Paczynski said, "Well, have you fed?" And she said, "Yes." Kim Jarvis said to her, "You look like you've had a 3-course meal."
After that, the 4 women abandon the body of Edward Baldock and immediately leave the scene of their crime. Once again, Kim Jarvis plays her part in the evening's events.
I drove back into the city and then each went to their homes. Jarvis took the knives and cleaned them both at her place, washed them in bleach.
The facts, the prosecution argues, show that all 3 girls were complicit in the savage murder of an innocent man. Paczynski is accused of supplying a murder weapon. Jarvis of luring Baldock into a trap and of covering up the evidence of his murder. And Tracy Waugh of sitting in the vehicle and doing nothing to intervene. The revelations stun the jury. But now the defense put their plan into action. The girls, they say, just couldn't help themselves.
I think it's fair to say that the defence lawyers attempted to hold Wigington up as the ringleader, which she was, but the other girls were influenced by her and, in effect, brainwashed to go along with her.
The defence portray Wigington, now behind bars, as a domineering, sadistic bully who wields extraordinary power over her female friends. They paint a picture of a woman abandoned by her parents and sent to live at the deceptively respectable-looking home of her violent grandmother and a grandfather, alleged to have sexually abused her. As a result, she starts to develop an obsessive hatred of men. As a schoolgirl at Range Catholic Convent, Wigington had bullied other children and early on revealed a sexual preference for women, which continued into her 20s.
She's not the sort of girl most blokes would take out. She did look butch. She had the short hair. She dressed in a sort of manly way. She didn't look very feminine at all. She looked like she'd been in a few scraps in her life. A roughie.
Paczynski, her counsel claims, had only met Wigington 2 weeks before the murder, but immediately fell under the spell of her overpowering personality. Paczynski, they claim, was vulnerable and easily led, with a long history of mental problems. Her defense calls a psychiatrist to testify.
The court heard Lisa Paczynski had a severe personality disorder. She was thoroughly infatuated and probably dominated by Tracy Wigington. Paczynski said of Wigington, she had some sort of inner power. She can do strange things. She can make people disappear, except their eyes. She can read my mind. The court was told Brzezinski had been admitted to hospital 82 times in the last 5 years. She'd overdosed on drugs or had tried to commit suicide.
Far from being a killer, Paczynski's defense make her out to be a victim. They say Paczynski believed that the plan to kill someone was a big joke. As evidence, they point out that she froze when faced with the order from Wigington to stab Baldock. This defense, that the girls never really believed Wigington intended to kill anyone, is repeated by the counsel for both Kim Jarvis and Tracy Waugh. 23-year-old Tracy Waugh is the only one to be accompanied throughout the trial by her parents.
She was dressed as you'd expect a girl to dress at her age. You know, she was in a nice little frock, her hair was done nicely, no makeup. She looked very young and very innocent.
Waugh's defense is that she was petrified of Wigington and had fallen under her mind control. The defense concludes that yes, all three girls had shared Wigington's morbid interest in the occult, which is why they had become friends. And yes, they used to spend hours watching horror movies together. But that is just what young people do. It doesn't make them killers. On the 13th of February 1991, following a 14-day trial, the jury retired to consider the case of the alleged lesbian vampire killers. Were they cold and heartless accomplices to murder? Or just weak young girls in thrall to an evil person who preys on their vulnerability? Finally, a verdict is reached.
The jury took more than 2 days to find two of the women guilty of the slaying. Today they found Lisa Brzezinski guilty of murder and Kim Jarvis guilty of manslaughter.
Lisa Paczynski receives a life sentence. Kim Jarvis is found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 18 years. But 23-year-old Tracy Waugh walks free.
There was not a lot of evidence against her. She got in on the plan, to do all this. But then she sat in the car, she didn't go down to the actual murder scene. There's no evidence of her touching the knives, or cleaning the clothes, or doing anything like that to assist. This was why she was acquitted.
Tracy Wigington and two of her three accomplices have been found guilty. For the family of Edward Baldock, justice appears to have been served, but the revelations have been deeply distressing.
Mrs. Baldock, she attended court, quite regularly. This murder, of course, was a dreadful thing to happen to a decent, loving family of the type that Baldock had.
In the course of the trial, certain parts of the press had unfairly painted him as a drunk and a disloyal husband who was willingly lured into the car. It drove Mrs. Baldock to the brink.
She was reported as saying she just wanted to kill them all. He'd lived a model life, just a normal, family-loving man. Wrong place, wrong time.
But in an extraordinary twist of fate, it seems that in the moments before his murder, Mr. Baldock may have inadvertently played a vital role in catching his killers. It all goes back to that key piece of evidence, Tracy Wigington's bank card that was found in his shoe. How did it get there?
So obviously when she took off a blouse or some part of her clothing, the bank card that she was in possession of fell to the ground.
When Wigington realised that she'd lost her card, she returned with Paczynski to the crime scene, but couldn't find it. Edward Baldock, by nature, was a tidy and fastidious man.
He must have seen it in the semi-darkness and poor light, recognised the bank card as a bank card that he thought was his, put it in his shoe, and the police found that bank card the next morning.
That act was the key to bringing Baldock's killers to justice. Without it, they might never have been caught.
We may not have had any success. We would have been looking for a good time for a male person or male persons. You wouldn't have thought of a female being a suspect.
In 1996, Kim Jarvis is granted parole after serving just 5 years. In 2009, Lisa Paczynski, then aged 43, is also released on parole. And in 2012, a 46-year-old Tracy Wigington is herself released after serving 23 years behind bars. But while all now walk free, the women will forever be branded the lesbian vampire killers.